Apparently, if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. becomes available, this is how much it's going to cost. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and in today's video, we're going over, again, the possibility of the Red Sox acquiring Vladimir Guerrero Jr. from the Blue Jays and exactly how much it would be and whether or not this is something we think is worth it for this Red Sox team. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. So the reason we're sitting here still talking about a Vladdy trade to the Boston Red Sox because the Red Sox have been connected to Vladdy quite a few times this offseason, whether it be by fans clamoring for, hey, the Red Sox are looking for a right-handed power bat. Vladdy would be the perfect right-handed power bat, whether that be the connection Red Sox fans have made to John Henry's willingness to spend on players like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., which is something apparently he is willing to do. He locked up Rafi for $300+ million. He was willing to offer Juan Soto $700 million. We know this is the profile of player the Red Sox are actually willing to invest in. On top of that, you've got Vladdy liking pictures of himself photoshopped into a Red Sox uniform with Rafi. You've got Bob Nightingale and John Heyman. Not exactly the two big analysts you want saying this, but they both said that if Vladdy gets to free agency, it's going to be with the Red Sox. Red Sox fans are sitting there and they're saying, hey, why don't we just skip all this free agent crap next offseason and trade for him now? And the question with that has always been, what is it going to take? Well, we kind of got a little bit of an answer over the last week because Ken Rosenthal put out an article in which he said to even think about trading Guerrero, a package would have to include major leaguers and top prospects and exceed the value the Padres received from the Yankees for Soto. That is certainly no small trade, folks. In that trade, the Padres got Michael King, Drew Thorpe, Johnny Brito, and Randy Vasquez, plus Higashioka. Now, Trent Grisham was included in this trade as well, but let's be honest here, that was just sort of a throw-in to help equalize the value even a little bit. This was mostly centered around Juan Soto. The Yankees probably would have put this package together for just Juan Soto. What that looked like in baseball trade values, shout out to our friend Robbie Hyde for this one, is a very, very big overpay. That is a lot of overall value going back to the San Diego Padres. In this trade, the Padres essentially got a young major league pitching talent, a cost-controlled pitching talent who ended up really transforming himself and taking a next step with the Padres. The Yankees' top pitching prospect, a top 15 pitching prospect in Vasquez, Johnny Brito, who was kind of a middle-of-the-road reliever, and Higashioka, a solid major league level catcher. The question now becomes, what does that look like in Red Sox terms? Well, breaking it down Red Sox-wise, I suppose your cost-controlled starter with upside would be Cutter Crawford. The Red Sox top pitching prospect would be Luis Paredes. A top 15 arm in the back half of the top 15 would most likely be a guy like David Sandlin, someone like that. Peyton Toll is also an option as well. Conley Early is certainly a name you could include in there. The average bullpen arm could be someone like Criswell, maybe Zach Kelly, maybe someone in that range. And a major league ready catcher would be someone like Carlos Narvaez. Now, this package is almost a dead match value-wise to what the Padres got for Soto, but there are, in my opinion, a couple of things that we need to make note of. The first one is that this might not be the exact package the Blue Jays are looking for. This is a very pitching-centric package, right? The Padres knew they needed to really revamp their pitching. Their starters were getting a little older. They didn't have a true bullpen piece that they wanted. They didn't really have a ton of depth in their farm system pitching-wise, so they go out and they acquire a whole lot of pitching. That might not be the case for the Toronto Blue Jays, although the Blue Jays could use help in a whole lot of areas. They might be sitting there saying, instead of a pitcher for Vladdy being sort of the main pieces here, we want positional players being the main piece for these trades, and then it becomes a little bit of an interesting conversation because who's the headlining for that package? I would assume that would mean Triston Casas, but outside of that, who else are you including in this deal to get this thing done? The second thing I want to point out is that this is sort of the basis, right? This is sort of the foundation of this trade. The Blue Jays appear to want to exceed this value. Now, that's a bigger question because we don't know what that means value-wise. Does that mean throwing in a lottery ticket prospect from the Red Sox? Does that mean throwing in a bench bat like a David Hamilton? Or does that mean you're going to need to include a high upside potential player in this trade as well, on top of all the other players you are giving up. A name like Miguel Blaze, a name like Mikey Romero, Franklin Arias, Yost Nixon Garcia, right? Are we going to need to include a bigger name on top of this? You're already getting into real complications with what this could look like for the Red Sox, but let's just say hypothetically, this is the trade you need to get done to get Vladdy to the Boston Red Sox. The question now becomes, is it worth it for this Red Sox team? The sort of problem with trying to work out whether or not this is worth it for the Red Sox is that if we're comparing it to the Soto trade to the Yankees, we know exactly how that worked out. The Yankees got Juan Soto. They had a fantastic 1-2 punch in Judge and Soto. It brought them to the World Series. They got to the World Series, which is great. If the Red Sox made it to the World Series, I think we'd all be pretty happy. But then they absolutely crap their pants in extremely embarrassing fashion and get destroyed in that said World Series. So they didn't come out of this with a ring. And then this offseason, not only did they not extend Soto, they didn't get Soto back, right? He embarrassingly, again, for the once great Yankee franchise, decided, nah, I'm good with the Yankees. I'm going to move across the street to Queens and I'm going to play for the New York Mets. A slap in the face. If that happens to the Red Sox, that's going to really suck, and that is a very real possibility, right? Vladimir Guerrero Jr., yes, has said, hey, I like playing in Boston. I would play for the Red Sox if I got to free agency, so maybe there's the potential of an extension there. But at the same time, too, if you're Vladdy and you're looking at what just happened with Juan Soto in free agency, where he got way over what he was predicted to get, not that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be in the $700+ million range, but he's probably sitting in the $400 million plus range. What if a team gets desperate for a star and ends up giving him close to $500 million, right? That possibility is absolutely on the table here if you're Vladimir Guerrero Jr., not to mention the deepest pockets in Major League Baseball, I guess outside of the Dodgers, who are just acquiring everybody on the free agent market at this point. RIP the dream of Tanner Scott to the Red Sox. If you're sitting there and you're saying, well, wait a second, the Mets are also the other team closely linked to the Red Sox. They just essentially said, now we're good on Pete Alonso. If I'm Vladdy, I don't get traded to the Mets, and I don't get a big paycheck from them. Why wouldn't I put myself into a free agency where the two of the biggest pocket teams in Major League Baseball really want my services? The Red Sox, who, despite the fact that they don't spend a ton of money recently, do have deep pockets, and the Mets, who have been throwing that money around. I'm going to create a bidding war for myself, and I'm going to make way more money. And I think that's ultimately what this boils down to if you're a Red Sox fan or if you're the Red Sox in general. Is it worth giving up this prospect haul if you're not going to be able to extend him? It's ultimately what this entire conversation always boils down to. It feels like that package on paper would be something you would be willing to give up for 10, 15 years of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in a Red Sox uniform. The problem is that is so much less than a guarantee, right? There is no guarantee that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to sit here and he's going to say, hey, yeah, give me what the Blue Jays offered me, and I'll play for the Red Sox for 15 seasons. So ultimately, to answer the question, is this the risk worth taking to get a talent in here like Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? Well, it's a tough answer to give, right? Because, again, I don't know if a pitching-centric prospect haul like this is something the Blue Jays are going to be looking for. Is it going to be less players with higher value, right? Are they going to want Brian Bayo instead of Cutter Crawford? Are they going to want Triston Casas instead of Cutter Crawford? Is a name like Marcelo Meyer going to be something that gets thrown in there? And then all of a sudden, you're talking about really depleting areas that you could really use these players in. I know we got a ton of middle infielders, but Marcelo Meyer is still one of the most talented prospects in baseball. Triston Casas feels like a name that absolutely should be attached to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It feels like something that would be dumb if you're the Blue Jays not to ask for if you're giving up your all-star, superstar first baseman. Hey, let's get that potential right on back here, and let's try this again and see if Casas works out a little bit better. Maybe they can bring in Casas and extend him, and that's their first baseman for the future. I think ultimately, risk-wise, it totally depends on this extension. It's, in my mind, simply not worth the risk to wildly overpay for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. if he's just going to end up leaving in free agency. And that question is, do you trust the Red Sox? I don't trust the Red Sox to sit there with this guy and, one, get a deal done in the first place, but two, figure out a way to get him in free agency if he doesn't get a deal done? Do you have faith that this Red Sox ownership group is going to sit there and they're going to say, we're giving 50 plus million on top of whatever anyone else offers for Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? I don't know why. Right? I guess you could say, oh, they offered $700 million for Soto, sure, but they weren't willing to go up to what Yankees and the Mets were willing to go up to for Soto. Are they going to be willing to go up to what the Mets are looking for Vladdy? I don't really have faith that they're going to do that. So is it worth giving up all these prospects just to lose them in a year in free agency, which more than likely would mean also losing Triston Casas as well? So now you're sitting there going into 2026. You don't have Casas. You don't have Vladdy. First base is a big problem you got to fill, right? It just, to me, it doesn't make a ton of sense. If the Red Sox are positive that they are going to extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr., then yeah, I think I'd be absolutely willing to overpay a whole lot to get Vladdy on this team. I love Triston more than I think a lot of people love Triston, and that's saying a lot. But even I sit there and I say, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Triston Casas, right? You could probably make the argument that Vladdy's a better fit long-term on this Red Sox team. I would be happy with extending either of them. Vladdy does make a lot of sense in this Red Sox lineup. And if there's a guarantee there, then yeah, $70 million in value going back to the Blue Jays for $20 million in value for Vladdy. Maybe they throw in a lottery ticket, pitching prospect, or whatever, and then you give him 12 years. It's absolutely worth the overpay. But unfortunately, that's not reality, right? Vladdy's not going to come with a guarantee. And at this point, in my mind, it makes more sense value-wise for the Red Sox if they are planning on giving him big money to try and get him in free agency. That way you could keep Casas this year, and hopefully if you're going to trade him, which feels like the Red Sox want to do, I don't think it's a smart idea, that value goes up, and then you could utilize him to get other pieces and then just pay Vlad in free agency, as opposed to having to go through this risk that the Yankees just went through and ended up with pie on their face. So ultimately, looking at this package, I don't think I do it unless an extension is guaranteed. And I think that's exactly what the Red Sox should be thinking when they're looking at the potential of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think that's the way a lot of you guys are looking at this as well. But I don't know. Is that what you guys are thinking about? Let me know in the comment section down below. One, you just found out what the parameters of a trade for Vladdy would cost. Who would you trade to get Vladdy on this team, given all the external situations combined in this conversation? No guarantee of a contract, going to free agency next season. And two, would you do it? Would you make this trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton, and it's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Don't forget, if you want to listen instead of watch these episodes, best way to do that is head over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the Red Seats.